When the only son of a feared mafia boss collapses mysteriously, 100 doctors from around the world are flown in, each one leaving defeated. The boy's body rejects every medicine, his heart slowing with each passing day. The mafia boss, a man who never begged in his life, finally kneels before fate. But when all hope is gone, a quiet cleaning lady at the hospital whispers, "Maybe my daughter can help." Everyone laughs, until the girl walks in, her dark skin glowing under the harsh hospital lights, eyes sharp as a scientist's, hands steady as fate itself. What she does next shocks every doctor and changes the destiny of the mafia forever. Hen, power, pride, and science all failed. A girl no one respected changed everything. Watch this heart-stopping story of mystery, healing, and redemption that will leave you speechless till the end. Don't forget to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. In the heart of the city stood the grandest hospital anyone had ever seen. Marble floors that shone like mirrors, hallways echoing with footsteps of power, and rooms reserved for people whose names never appeared in newspapers, but whose shadows ruled entire nations. It was the place where the rich came to cheat death, and where the poor came only to clean after them. Among the dozens of unseen workers scrubbing its floors was Maria, a quiet woman who moved with the tired grace of someone used to being invisible. Her hands were cracked from years of bleach and detergent, her back bent from labor, yet her eyes, dark and unwavering, carried the silent pride of a mother who refused to break. She never spoke unless spoken to, and even then, her words were soft. Most doctors barely noticed her existence. To them, she was part of the furniture, useful, but unimportant. What no one knew was that every evening, when Maria returned to her tiny apartment on the city's edge, she transformed from a silent cleaner into a storyteller. Sitting by a flickering lamp, she'd tell her daughter Amara stories about the people she saw, about the powerful men with trembling hands, the arrogant surgeons who couldn't hide fear in their eyes. Amara listened with fascination. She was unlike the other children in their neighborhood. Where others saw hopelessness, she saw patterns. She could fix a broken radio using wires from an old fan, heal a sick bird using herbal mixtures her grandmother once taught her, and explain the stars using a cracked science book she'd found in the trash. Maria called her my little genius. But outside their small home, people called her something else. Black girl with dirty hands, one shopkeeper sneered once when Amara tried to buy bread. "You think you're smarter than us?" They laughed at her dreams. They mocked her skin. And yet Amara's mother would always whisper the same words. "Don't let their eyes define you, child. You were born for something bigger." One rainy morning, the entire hospital erupted in chaos. Sirens, flashing lights, security guards rushing to seal the gates. Maria, sweeping near the entrance, froze as black cars with tinted windows screeched to a halt. Men in suits, hard-faced, armed, expressionless, stepped out first. Then came a tall figure in a long coat, his presence commanding silence even before he spoke. Everyone knew who he was. Don Massimo De Luca, the most feared mafia boss in the country. His name alone could stop hearts. His power stretched across borders, and even the police saluted when he passed. But that day, his face wasn't the face of a monster. It was the face of a father. In his arms, he carried his teenage son, pale, trembling, lifeless. The boy's name was Luca, the only heir to the De Luca empire. Within minutes, the hospital turned into a fortress. The best doctors were summoned. Security sealed every exit. Nurses whispered rumors, poison, rare virus, curse, but no one knew for sure. Maria stood at the end of the hallway, watching quietly as doctors rushed past. Her mop dripped water onto the polished floor, unnoticed. In her heart, she felt something strange. An ache, not just for the boy, but for the desperation in the father's eyes. She had seen arrogance before. She had cleaned the floors beneath the feet of men who thought they owned the world. But this was different. That night, while others gossiped, Maria prayed. She didn't know why, but something inside told her this was not a sickness that medicine could fix. Days passed. Doctor after doctor came and failed. The boy's condition worsened. He didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't even open his eyes. Machines kept him alive, but his body seemed to reject every treatment. Don Massimo's patience was legendary when it came to business. But when it came to his son, he was breaking. The sound of his rage could be heard down every corridor. Chairs thrown, walls punched, threats whispered into terrified doctors' ears. No one dared to leave the hospital until he said so. Maria kept working silently, her heart pounding every time she passed the guarded ICU. She'd catch glimpses of the boy's pale face, his mother's sobbing silhouette, and the boss pacing like a trapped lion. On the 7th day, something happened that no one noticed except Maria. As she mopped near the boy's room, she saw a thin mist escaping the air vents, swirling faintly, disappearing before her eyes. It smelled faintly of bitter almonds. It wasn't normal. Her cleaning instincts told her something was wrong, something invisible. She went to report it to a nurse, but the woman laughed, waving her off. "You think we need advice from a cleaner? Go mop the bathrooms, Maria." So Maria said nothing more. She swallowed the insult, just as she had 100 others before. But that night, as she sat at home, her mind couldn't rest. She told Amara everything, the mist, the smell, the doctor's confusion. Amara's eyes lit up. She started sketching on a scrap of paper, scribbling equations, drawing lungs and arrows. "Mama, that's not a sickness," she murmured. "That's exposure. Something's poisoning him slowly, like it's in the air he breathes." Maria frowned. "What could it be?" Amara bit her lip. "Maybe something mixed with the oxygen in his room, or something they don't even think to check." The next morning, Maria returned to the hospital, but something inside her had changed. She began observing, quietly, carefully, like her daughter had taught her. She noticed how one nurse wore gloves that didn't match the uniform, how a guard at the ICU door kept sniffing his sleeve, hiding a small smirk, how the cleaning schedule near the boy's room had been restricted ever since he arrived. Piece by piece, the picture formed in her mind. Terrifying and clear. Someone inside the hospital wanted the boy to die. That night she came home trembling. "Amara, this is bigger than us," she whispered. But Amara only smiled faintly. "Sometimes God hides his warriors in small rooms, Mama." Maria didn't understand at first what her daughter meant, until 3 nights later. The boy's heart stopped for 3 full minutes. Every doctor panicked. They shocked him back to life, but his pulse was fading again. Don Massimo, for the first time in his life, fell to his knees beside the bed. It was then that Maria, standing in the corner of the hallway with her mop, whispered a prayer. She couldn't stand it anymore. The injustice, the arrogance, the blindness of all these educated men who looked down on people like her. The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Maybe my daughter can help." Her voice was soft, barely audible. But in that silence, it echoed like thunder. Every head turned. Nurses stared. One doctor snorted. "A cleaning lady? Offering help where 100 doctors had failed?" Don Massimo slowly turned his head toward her. His eyes were dark, cold, and dangerous. "What did you say?" Maria's lips trembled, but she didn't step back. "My daughter, she knows things, science, medicine. Please, just let her see him." A laugh rolled through the room, low, mocking, cruel. But somewhere in the back of that crowded ICU, the boy's monitor beeped again, louder this time. Everyone froze, and Don Massimo whispered, "Bring her!" The whispers spread like wildfire. A black girl, daughter of a janitor, being called to heal the Mafia boss's son. No one could decide if it was madness or a miracle in disguise. But Maria knew one thing. This was the moment her daughter had been born for. And as the city lights flickered outside, Amara packed her small bag of handmade tools, herbs, and a second-hand stethoscope. Her time had come. The night air outside the DeLuca Mansion hospital wing was heavy with fear. Even the guards at the door shifted uneasily, glancing at the girl standing in front of them. Amara, small, calm, carrying a worn leather bag that looked older than she was. Her dark skin gleamed faintly under the fluorescent lights, her eyes steady and observant, as if she already knew what awaited her inside. Maria stood behind her, wringing her hands, her heart racing. She had never been this close to power before, and she knew one wrong word could cost them both their lives. The door opened. 2 armed men led them down a hallway lined with luxury, gold frames, marble pillars, imported vases. Yet, beneath the beauty, there was the scent of fear. In the final room, Don Massimo sat beside his son's bed. His once imposing figure looked smaller now, shadowed by desperation. His son, Luca, lay motionless, pale lips, fragile chest rising and falling with the help of machines. Around them stood a dozen doctors in expensive coats, their pride shattered, their confidence gone. When Amara entered, a murmur swept through them. "She's just a child. Is this a joke? A cleaner's daughter?" Don Massimo's eyes didn't blink. "You said you can help," he said quietly. "Do it." Amara didn't answer. She simply placed her small bag on the table and began examining the room, the air vents, the machines, the IV lines. Her movements were slow, deliberate, scientific. One of the senior doctors scoffed. "We've tested everything in this room, child. There's nothing you'll find that a professional hasn't already checked." But Amara didn't look up. "That's because you looked for what you expected to find," she murmured, almost to herself. "Not what's hiding." The room fell silent. She moved closer to the boy. Her fingers hovered above his skin, not touching, just feeling. His pulse was faint but uneven, as though his body was fighting something unseen. She leaned closer to the ventilator, sniffed the air, then frowned. "Turn off the purifier for 1 minute," she said. The doctors exchanged glances. "That's dangerous," one protested. "Do it," Don Massimo ordered. A switch clicked. The hum stopped. Within seconds, Amara's expression darkened. "There it is again," she whispered. She walked to the vent, unscrewed the panel using a small tool from her bag. A puff of faint mist escaped, carrying that same bitter almond scent Maria had described. She turned to the stunned doctors. "This isn't disease. It's poison. Someone's feeding it through the air supply." Gasps echoed around the room. "Impossible," one shouted. "That system is sterile." But Amara pulled out a cotton swab, pressed it gently inside the vent, and showed them the faint green residue glistening in the light. "Cyanogen compounds," she said softly. "Synthetic, rare. Someone's using microdoses that mimic infection." Don Massimo's face went still. His knuckles whitened. "You're saying—" "Someone tried to kill my son. Inside this hospital?" Amara nodded. "And they're still doing it." From that moment, everything changed. The hospital became a cage of suspicion. Guards doubled, cameras installed, every doctor questioned. But Amara didn't stop there. She demanded to run her own tests, something that infuriated the medical team. "She's a child," one surgeon sneered. "This is absurd." But Don Massimo only said, "Let her work." And so she did. For hours, Amara sat by Luca's bedside, watching every monitor, taking notes, comparing air samples, and mixing simple solutions with herbs and minerals. She worked silently, tirelessly, as Maria cleaned quietly in the background, praying under her breath. When Amara wasn't observing the boy, she was analyzing people. She noticed how the head nurse avoided her gaze, how the chief doctor flinched whenever Don Massimo's name was mentioned, how one security guard always seemed to stand near the medicine supply room. Piece by piece, she built a map of suspicion in her mind. Late that night, she followed the nurse to the basement, unnoticed. There, among the cleaning supplies, she found something terrifying, a small, unmarked canister with the same green residue near the lid. Her heart raced. She took a photo with her old phone and turned to leave, but the nurse appeared behind her, eyes cold. "You shouldn't be here, little genius," she hissed. "You think you're saving him? You're just delaying what's already done." Before Amara could speak, the nurse lunged. But Amara had learned to survive in harder places than this. She ducked, grabbed the mop handle nearby, and pushed the woman back. The canister fell, rolling across the floor. Moments later, guards arrived, summoned by the noise. The nurse tried to spin the story, screaming that Amara had attacked her, but Amara lifted her phone, showing them the photo. "This is the poison you've been pumping into his room," she said firmly. "Check the residue if you don't believe me." The guards hesitated, unsure who to trust. Then Don Massimo himself appeared, drawn by the commotion. When he saw the canister and the nurse trembling beside it, his eyes went cold. "Take her," he said. The woman screamed as they dragged her away. Amara stood still, breathing hard. Maria rushed to her, holding her shoulders. "My child," she whispered. You've just made enemies you can't even see." But Amara only replied, "If truth makes enemies, Mama, then let them come." The next morning, the news spread. The Mafia boss's son poisoned by insiders. Don Massimo's rage was volcanic. He ordered every staff member investigated. Dozens were fired. The nurse confessed under pressure. She'd been bribed by a rival family to finish what medicine couldn't detect. But Amara wasn't done. She knew poison wasn't the only danger. Luca's body was fragile now, fighting both chemical damage and trauma. So she began crafting a cure, not from luxury drugs, but from natural compounds and oxygen balancing. She used activated charcoal, herbal infusions, and a unique breathing formula she developed herself to flush out the toxins. The doctors laughed behind her back. "Child's play," they muttered. "Folk medicine nonsense." Yet as days passed, Luca's pulse steadied. His breathing evened, his color returned, the laughter stopped. Don Massimo began to stand silently by the door, watching her work. The girl never looked afraid, never asked for money. She treated the boy as if he were her own brother. At night, Maria sat beside her daughter, whispering, "You've done enough. Let them take over now." But Amara shook her head. "No, Mama, they still don't understand. The poison wasn't just in the air, it was in their pride. They stopped seeing the truth because it came from someone like me." The deeper she went, the more she realized the system wasn't designed to heal. It was designed to obey. Doctors refused to admit their errors, not because they couldn't see, but because they couldn't bear being outsmarted by a cleaner's daughter. So Amara decided to make them see. On the 10th night, she gathered them all, the doctors, the nurses, even Don Massimo, and demonstrated how the poison entered the air vents through micro-syringes hidden in maintenance ducts. Then she showed them how her herbal formula neutralized the remaining compounds inside the boy's lungs. The lead doctor, red with shame, muttered, "How did you even know what to test?" Amara's answer was calm. "Because I listened to what you ignored." Her words hit the room like a storm. Don Massimo's eyes filled with something no one had ever seen before: respect. By the 12th day, Luca opened his eyes. His voice was weak, but the first word he whispered was, "Papa." The Mafia boss dropped to his knees, clutching his son's hand, tears falling freely. Around them, silence reigned, the kind that only follows a miracle. Amara stood in the corner, exhausted but calm. She didn't need applause. The truth was enough. But as she turned to leave, Don Massimo stopped her. "Tell me," he said quietly, "what do you want in return?" Amara looked him in the eyes. "I want nothing for myself. Just promise me one thing, that no one like my mother will ever be invisible again." Don Massimo said nothing for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You have my word." That night, Maria and Amara walked home under the dim streetlights. The world around them was the same. Cracked roads, flickering lamps, echoing footsteps. But inside, everything had changed. Maria looked at her daughter, tears shining in her eyes. "You've done what 100 men couldn't. How does it feel?" Amara smiled faintly. "It feels like the beginning." Watch till the end for the shocking twist that silenced everyone. Comment watching till the end. If you believe in hidden genius, subscribe for more life-changing, suspense-filled stories every week. For a few fleeting days, peace settled over the De Luca estate. The boy, Luca, was recovering, slowly, carefully. His skin had regained color, his heart monitors beeped steadily, and for the first time in weeks, laughter echoed faintly through the hallways. The doctors, once proud and dismissive, now stepped aside whenever Amara passed. They didn't know whether to feel grateful or humiliated. The world they'd built on titles and degrees had been shaken by a girl who had neither. But behind the walls of that golden empire, another storm was brewing. Amara could sense it. She could feel eyes on her, watching from corners, whispering in shadows. Someone wasn't finished yet. Someone powerful, and furious that their plan had failed. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, painting the hospital in fading amber, Don Massimo invited Amara and her mother to a private dinner. The dining room was lavish. Crystal chandeliers, Long oak table, guards at every door. He stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "My son breathes because of you," he said finally. "For that, I owe you my blood." Maria bowed her head humbly, whispering, "We only did what any mother and daughter would do." But Amara's gaze stayed on his face. "Your enemies won't stop here," she said softly. "Someone inside your own circle tried to kill him. The poison was placed with knowledge of your private systems. That means someone close to you was paid, or betrayed you." The room fell silent. Don Massimo's jaw tightened. "I've already questioned everyone." Amara shook her head. "Not everyone." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small glass vial, half filled with translucent liquid. "I found this in the filtration pipes this morning. It was placed after you arrested the nurse." His eyes widened. "The poisoning is still happening," she said. "But they've changed their method. It's in the water now." Before anyone could speak, one of the guards, tall, muscular, dressed in black, stepped forward. "That's impossible. I checked the system myself." Amara turned slowly to him. "Exactly," the guard froze. His face went pale. Don Massimo looked from Amara to the man. "What are you saying?" She took a step closer, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "I've seen this man every night near the filtration wing. He pretended to check pipes but never logged entries. He's not protecting you, Don Massimo. He's finishing what the others couldn't." The room exploded in chaos. Guards drew weapons, shouting. The accused man bolted toward the exit, but Amara was faster. She threw the vial against the marble floor, and as it shattered, a faint gas hissed upward. The guard staggered, choking. His sleeve dissolved where the gas touched it, proof of the poison's power. Don Massimo roared, "Get him!" 2 men tackled the traitor to the ground. He screamed, cursing the girl, spitting words of hate. "You think you've won, little witch? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "This goes higher than DeLuca. You've just signed your death warrant." But Amara didn't flinch. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Truth doesn't die, even if those who speak it do." The man was dragged away, thrashing until the doors slammed shut. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint crackle of broken glass underfoot. Then Don Massimo turned to Amara, his face pale, his voice trembling not from fear but awe. "You just saved my son and my empire." Amara shook her head. "No, sir. I saved a boy. What you do with your empire is still your choice." That night the story should have ended. But fate had other plans. Word spread fast, faster than bullets. A girl from the slums had not only healed the Mafia heir, but exposed a network of corruption, buried deep within the city's most powerful medical system. And with exposure came danger. Amara woke in the middle of the night to the sound of shattering glass. She sat up instantly. Maria was already standing by the door, fear in her eyes. Before they could react, 2 masked men burst into the room, guns raised. "Run, Mama!" Amara screamed, a shot fired, splintering the window instead of flesh, as Maria grabbed her daughter's hand. They darted through the narrow corridor, alarms blaring. Outside, rain poured like fate itself. The women ran through the dark streets, soaked and breathless, as black cars screeched behind them. Maria stumbled, clutching her chest. "Go, child! No!" Amara dragged her forward, eyes burning with determination. "We started this together. We finish it together." They reached a narrow alley near the old church. The bell rang once, midnight. Amara pushed her mother into the shadows as headlights approached. A figure stepped out of the car, holding an umbrella. Not a hitman, not a stranger. It was the hospital's chief doctor, the same man who had mocked her, doubted her, and called her the cleaning lady's child. His voice was calm, almost kind. "You should have stayed quiet, Amara. You embarrassed too many powerful people. Now the only cure left is silence." Amara's heart pounded. "You were behind it all," he smirked. "Medicine is business. The DeLuca boy's death would have opened doors worth millions. And who would believe a girl like you over me?" Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face, cold, emotionless, corrupt to the core. But before he could step closer, another voice echoed through the rain. "I would." It was Don Massimo. He emerged from the shadows with a dozen armed men. Every gun pointed straight at the doctor. The man froze, color draining from his face. "Don, this isn't what you think." "It's exactly what I think," Don Massimo interrupted. his voice low and deadly. "You tried to kill my son. You tried to silence her." The doctor trembled. "She's lying. You can't take her word over mine. She's just what?" Don Massimo barked. "A cleaning lady's daughter? A black girl. A genius who saw what you couldn't." Thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing his fury. The doctor fell to his knees, begging. "Please, I did it for money. They made me—" But Don Massimo raised a hand. "No excuses. You poisoned my bloodline. You disrespected the truth." He turned to Amara. "What should I do with him?" For a long moment, she stared at the trembling man. Her face was calm, almost sorrowful. "You don't need to do anything," she said quietly. "Justice isn't revenge. It's truth revealed." Then she looked toward the flashing lights approaching. Police sirens. "Let the world see what kind of men hide behind white coats." Don Massimo nodded slowly. For the first time, he didn't act like a mafia boss. He acted like a father honoring his promise. The doctor was handed over to the authorities. Cameras caught every second. The next morning, headlines around the city screamed, "Mafia heir saved by black teen genius. Hospital corruption exposed by cleaner's daughter. From shadows to spotlight." The girl who outsmarted 100 doctors, but behind the fame and flashing lights, Amara felt no pride, only peace. She visited Luca one last time before leaving. He smiled weakly, gripping her hand. "You saved me," he whispered. She smiled. "No, you fought. I just showed you how." Don Massimo approached, holding a small envelope. "For your future," he said quietly. "A scholarship. Any university in the world." Amara shook her head. "Knowledge isn't bought, sir. It's built. I'll make my own way." He looked at her for a long moment, then bowed his head. "Then at least take my respect." Amara turned to leave, her mother beside her. The guards opened the doors, not because they were ordered to, but because they wanted to. As she stepped into the sunlight, camera flashes followed her, but she didn't look back. The world now knew her name. But she still preferred when only her mother whispered it. Softly, proudly, like a prayer. Amara. The girl who healed what power couldn't. After 100 doctors failed, a poor black girl uncovered a shocking conspiracy inside the hospital, while healing a mafia boss's dying son. Watch till the end for the mind-blowing twist that shocked the entire world. Comment, "Justice always wins," if you believe truth defeats power. Subscribe for more powerful and emotional drama stories every week. Months passed since that stormy night when Amara changed everything. The story spread far beyond the De Luca empire, beyond the city, beyond borders. It was no longer about the mafia, the poison, or even the boy who survived. It was about her, the black girl with the mind of a scientist and the heart of a healer. News anchors called her the miracle child. Universities sent her letters of invitation. Reporters hunted her for interviews. But Amara disappeared quietly, leaving no address, no phone number, just a note that read, "Truth doesn't belong to fame. It belongs to those who listen." She and her mother returned to their small apartment on the edge of the city. The same cracked walls, the same flickering bulb. But something invisible had changed. Their names now carried weight. When Maria walked to work, people greeted her with respect instead of indifference. When Amara passed by the local school, children whispered her name like a legend. But she didn't want worship. She wanted change. At the same hospital that once mocked her, new signs appeared on every wall. All lives deserve equal respect. Genius can come from anywhere. Don Massimo had kept his word. He funded a new medical wing in her name, the Amara Research Center for Ethical Medicine. Not in marble and gold, but built for the poor, for children who couldn't afford doctors, for mothers who cleaned floors by day and dreamed for their children by night. When the ribbon was cut, Maria stood at the back, tears shining in her eyes. She remembered all the nights of hunger, the insults, the loneliness, and now her daughter's name carved in stone. Don Massimo himself attended the opening. Gone was the ruthless edge in his voice. Grief had humbled him. "My empire was built on fear," he admitted publicly. "But this girl taught me that respect builds something far stronger." The crowd fell silent. No one had ever heard him speak like that. Meanwhile, the city's entire medical board came under investigation. The corrupt doctors who had profited from secret deals were exposed and stripped of their licenses. The same chief doctor who had orchestrated the poisoning now sat in prison, watching his downfall broadcast on every screen. And among all those stories of disgrace and punishment, one name kept rising like sunlight through clouds: Amara. But she didn't attend the ceremonies, the award functions, or the interviews. She spent her time elsewhere, in libraries, on rooftops, and in old workshops, building strange contraptions out of scrap metal and glass. She wasn't chasing recognition. She was chasing understanding, Maria sometimes worried. "You've already done so much, my child. Why can't you rest?" Amara would smile softly. "Because, Mama, there's always someone else out there who's being ignored, someone like me. If I stop now, who'll show them they can rise too?" Her words became the heartbeat of a quiet revolution. Within 2 years, her story inspired thousands of young students from poor backgrounds. Crowdfunding began for scholarships named after her. Schools played documentaries about her journey, not as a fairy tale, but as a testament to resilience. Even in places where color, class, and privilege still decided who got to belong, Amara's name whispered rebellion. But her life was never about rebellion. It was about restoration. One afternoon, as she sat teaching children in a small community lab she'd built, a familiar voice echoed from the door. It was Luca De Luca, older, healthy, smiling. He held a bouquet of wildflowers. "You never visited us," he said playfully. Amara smiled, wiping her hands on her lab coat. "You didn't need me anymore." He shook his head. "That's not true. I wanted you to see something." He handed her a folder. Inside was a foundation document. The Amara Maria Fellowship for Underprivileged Medical Innovators. "We used your research to start this," he said. "My father says this is the only empire worth building, one that saves lives." Amara's eyes softened. "You kept your promise," Luca smiled. "We both did. The years that followed transformed everything. The hospital that once silenced the poor became the city's most trusted sanctuary." Maria, now retired, spent her mornings watering the garden outside the Amara research wing, smiling at children who ran by in lab coats too big for them. Every wall carried her daughter's legacy, not in statues, but in principles, humility, compassion, and courage. And though Don Massimo's empire still carried shadows, he began funding free clinics across the country. People whispered that the Mafia boss had turned into a philanthropist. Some said it was guilt. Others said it was Amara's influence. Whatever the reason, change had begun. One rainy night, years later, a journalist finally tracked Amara down to a small coastal town. She found her sitting beneath a broken streetlight, repairing an old medical drone. "Miss Amara," the reporter said breathlessly, "you've changed medicine, saved lives, and inspired millions. Tell me, what drives you now?" Amara didn't look up from her work. Her hands moved with calm precision. "People think genius is about knowledge," she said. "But it's not. It's about listening to what others ignore, to the quiet cries of those who can't afford to be heard." The reporter blinked. "Do you ever regret not taking fame or fortune for what you did?" Finally, Amara looked up, her eyes reflecting the rain and the faint light. "No," she said simply. "Fame fades, but truth heals." The wind carried her words away, but their weight lingered, echoing long after the interview ended. The next morning, a new article appeared online. "The girl who healed more than a mafia heir, she healed humanity." The piece went viral, not because of her face or her fame, but because of her message. It reminded people of what mattered: decency, courage, and equality. And in homes across the world, mothers told their daughters her story, not as a tale of miracle, but of justice. Years later, Maria's grave stood on a hill overlooking the city. The air was peaceful, heavy with jasmine. Amara placed a single white rose on the stone. Her mother had passed quietly, her face serene, knowing her daughter had fulfilled every dream she never dared to speak aloud. Beside the grave, the hospital shimmered in the distance, its walls engraved with names of healed children. A small boy ran up the hill holding a flower, his voice bright. "Miss Amara, they're waiting for you. The new students are here." She turned, smiling. "Tell them I'll be right there." As the child ran off, she looked at the sky, calm, endless, forgiving. Her life had begun with invisibility. It ended with illumination, she whispered softly, almost to the wind. "Mama, we made it. They finally see us." In the city below, a statue stood, not of Amara, but of two figures, a woman holding a mop, and beside her, a girl holding a stethoscope made from scraps. Beneath them were the words, "To those who heal, even when the world tries to break them." And that was her true reward. Not power, not wealth, but the realization that the greatest miracles are born from the most ordinary hands. After saving a Mafia boss's dying son, the black genius daughter of a cleaning lady changed the entire world with her courage and compassion. Watch the emotional ending that will touch your soul and restore your faith in humanity. Comment "Truth always wins" if you believe in miracles born from ordinary hearts. Subscribe for more powerful and emotional real-life inspired stories every week.